Hi, my name is Ken Davidian, and welcome to second season of Organization Theory in Space, or OT in Space. In this season, I'm making one video for every chapter in the Oxford Handbook of Organizational Change and Innovation. Second edition, edited by Marshall Scott Poole and Andy Van de Ven. This video covers the last chapter, chapter 36 of the handbook, entitled Entangled Views of Exogenous and Endogenous Change. This chapter looks at three different ways that 7 chapters in the handbook treat the concepts of endogenous and exogenous change. The first way treats endogenous and exogenous concepts as ontologically separate but analytically separable. Chapters 14, 17, and 19 fit into this category by investigating how the internal and external environments interact with each other. The second way, including chapters 15 and 20, ignores the ontological differences and treats the difference between the two as purely analytical, depending on how the researcher decides to distinguish between them. Lastly, the third way of treating the concepts of endogeneity and exogeneity recognizes the entanglement between them and combines the two ontologies into one. This is done in chapters 8 and 27. The first way of dealing with the endogenous and exogenous duality recognizes the ontological uniqueness of each, asserts that they can be separated analytically, but acknowledges their interactions and entanglements. In this view, the endogenous and exogenous interact and affect each other in recursive and complex ways. Chapter 14 on the hedging behavior of organizations within a regulatory environment depicts the corporate and government interactions as separate, but recognizes how each affects the other. Chapter 17 describes institutional change and its recursive relationships with organizations external to it, breaking down the barrier between internal and external. Change in institutions happen via 4 different pathways based on the pace of change, the scope of change, and levels of analysis. Chapter 19 describes the evolutionary motor of variation selection retention as an internally driven response that is not necessarily a result of an organization's survival instinct, but driven by the co-creation of external contexts being shaped by and helping shape the forces that drive variation and retention. In the second view, the ontological differences are not put front and center, but the focus is on the ability to analytically separate the internal and external contexts without taking any specific ontological position. Chapter 15 focuses on internal instead of external forces that result in changes to organizational routines. The internal pattern changes to internal routines are the result of multiple iterations carrying out a given routine. Chapter 20 discusses complexity theory models of organizational change. The chapter explains that some of these models include dynamic changes across organizational levels or scales, implicitly invoking the endogenous-exogenous divide. In agent-based modeling, the boundary between the agents and the environment must be specified by the analyst. In dynamical models, there is an interplay among internal elements like financial processes and external elements like cyclic changes in seasons. Far from equilibrium models depict self-organizing models that require the definition of a boundary between interaction agents. The third treatment of the exogenous-endogenous dualism is by considering them to be ontologically entangled, or basically 2 sides of the same coin. Separation between the internal and external contexts is possible, but it's decided by the analyst based on some defined set of conditions, and it's only temporary, applicable only to the analysis at hand. Chapter 8 treats the dichotomy this way, explaining that the yin is always present in the yang and vice versa. One aspect transforms into its opposite in a cyclic and continuous process. There are internal and external momenta to this cycle, and those momenta can be transformed by understanding its direction and fit with the existing context. Chapter 27 discusses a way to integrate the ontologies of continuous and episodic change with a perspective referred to as imminent temporal trajectory. Episodic change is defined as breaks in streams of continuous change, and the importance of an episodic change may be understood differently from the subjective perspective of different observers, and then only with the passage of time. In this chapter, the boundary between endogenous and exogenous contexts is a function of time through understanding the relationship between two events in retrospect. So, what does this all mean? It means that the fundamental concept of inside out can be viewed at least three ways, or from three different points of view. And adopting these 3 points of view helps us see in some ways, but it keeps us from seeing in other ways. As applied to other concepts, this handbook details the concepts of change both as episodic and continuous, being and becoming, as spectacular events and flowing streams, or more generally from the perspectives of variance research and process research. Well, that's it from this chapter. And of course, if you want more details about any of the concepts in this chapter, I encourage you to refer back to the videos of the chapters that are cited in this video. I hope you enjoyed this video, as always, as much as I did. And if you did, I'd still encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the future videos, because this is the last video in the second season of Organization Theory in Space. I've got plans for a season 3, and I want you to be aware of those when those come out. So again, I encourage you to hit that subscription button or that notification bell. And we look forward to seeing you in the next season. Bye. OT in Space was produced by IRL, which stands for Impossible Research LLC. IRL conducts process research on the topics of innovation and industry emergence within the space sector context. IRL also offers services of organization theory consulting, research consulting, and STEAM outreach. This video is intended for educational purposes only.